The Hunger Games: Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. The story takes place 64 years before the events of the first movie, where a much younger Snow is chosen to become a mentor in the 10th annual Hunger Games. So a cool thing about this movie is that Lucy Gray, the tribute who Snow is assigned to, is actually the person who wrote the Hanging Tree song from the original movies.
Are you coming to the tree?
Again, I had no idea that this movie was coming out. I did not know that there was even a book written because I am slow and I don't hear anything that comes out. But I had a lot of thoughts, and I thought it would be best to kind of split it into a good section, a bad section, and in case you're in the mood for something similar, some alternatives. And yeah, let's kind of just get into it, I guess. Throughout the movie, sets and costumes were just great. All the capital scenes really captured the dystopian American future aesthetic. Costumes were great too. Those school uniforms with the skirts, amazing. Snow himself was dripped out too. There's this one scene at the end where he has a new suit on, and when I say my jaw dropped, it's really no secret that Peter Dinklage can act. He's as famous as he is for a reason, but this movie really drives home just how good he is. Dinklage has this amazing ability to turn any script and any character into his own. Lines that would sound clunky from some of the best actors sound completely natural coming from him. Don't get me wrong, there are some solid performances here, but Peter is just on a whole nother level. This is more of a personal thing, but I really like when characters have some kind of animal motif. Just like how you can tell a lot about a person by the kind of pet that they have, you can tell a lot about a character by the animal that represents them. Lucy Gray has a snake motif throughout, and I really enjoyed that. No idea why, I just thought it was cool. I really like the idea of Snow being a fugitive on the run. Going on to perpetuate a system that at one point would have had him hung makes his character just so much more interesting. I really wish this section was longer in the movie, but even the small glimpse gives an entirely new angle to the person that Snow eventually becomes. Caesar Flickerman is back in this movie, or at least one of his ancestors, but either way, I love him. In this movie, Flickerman is a magician, and his stage presence is just so magical, no pun intended. His tricks and personality are so enjoyable that if this were a real person with a real show, I'd unironically watch. After the whole The Idol debacle with Sam Levinson, I really like that the core Euphoria cast members are starting to branch out into their own major projects. Jacob Elordi was fantastic in Priscilla, and though Schaefer's role is pretty minor in this movie, I loved seeing her, and I really hope to see more in the future. I'm going to preface this section by saying that I misunderstood Snow's story from the beginning. I tend to go into villain origin stories trying to see what corrupted them, because villains aren't born, they're created. But this isn't that kind of story. This isn't the story of a good person turning evil, this is the story of a bad person accepting that they're bad. Which brings me to my first point. I normally like to view movies and their source material as completely separate things. Sometimes the movie is better, sometimes the book is better, and sometimes they're both good for different reasons. But with this situation in particular, it's hard to separate the two because all of the good things about the movie require you to have read the book to truly understand. In the book, we have a much deeper understanding of Snow, not just his circumstances, but his inner monologue, something that's completely absent from the movie. Without the added context, a good chunk of Snow's actions seemingly come out of nowhere to the point where it's jarring. Those who have never read the book are probably left with lots of questions that are all more or less answered in the source material. And while that isn't a problem for half the audience, it's still a problem when you alienate the other half. Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes suffers from being a bit unfocused. It's one part political drama, one part action deathmatch, and one part character study, and all these elements are constantly at war with each other. To be fair, the second Hunger Games movie, Catching Fire, had some of the same issues in that it was half political celebrity drama and half action flick. But there, it was much less of a problem. We already know who Katniss and Peeta are, and the familiar faces ground us in the story. And sure, we know Snow too, but we don't know this Snow. Sure, we know the capital, but we don't know this capital. Sure, we know the games, but we don't know these games. And all the background noise makes it hard to figure out who or what any of them are. Boring scenes drag on too long, interesting scenes end too quickly, half the plot is shoehorned into clunky exposition, it's a mess. And to be fair, I really don't blame the movie for this. A huge amount was cut from what was already not enough runtime. Maybe if this were a 4-episode TV miniseries or something, it could have worked. There are just so many moving parts all smashing into one another that nothing ever really flowed. There is an idea of Lucy Gray, taken from her people and forced to fight to the death. There is an idea of Coriolanus Snow, the young man desperate to claw his way to the top and live up to his father. There is an idea of a romance between the two. There is an idea of Sejanus the ally, of Valum Nagal the game maker, and of a story that could have been great, but the idea is as far as we get. None of these characters have brains, they're AI generated, they're not really human. The things that they say and do are just so far removed from how real people approach things. At some point, a character will be quiet, and the next they're yelling and throwing shit. Sure, there might be a logical reason, but the emotional journey to these actions is just absent. No, I don't want to spend too much time on this one because I don't want to rustle any jimmies, but I do have to ask, did anyone else find the black representation in this movie weird? Like, I know that Panem is technically just a rebranded United States, so black people are going to be there, but probability-wise, how are there so many people of the same minority chosen to be tributes? And how did none of those black tributes die in the attacks before the games? Why did every black tribute die as some morally upstanding martyr? Why was Lucy the only person in 12 to have a country accent? I just find it odd how they're so strongly evoking this image of racial disparity in a movie focused on a blonde-haired, blue-eyed white guy. Soulless corporate brand of representation, authentic Miles Morales brand of representation. Maybe it's intentional, maybe I'm seeing things, but I don't know, I just don't think it works. Now, I actually like Dominic Fike, but even I thought that Elliot's singing in Euphoria was dragged out to the point of it becoming medieval torture. But oh my god, Lucy's singing is so much worse. There's so many scenes where she just randomly starts belting some country song and it just goes on and on and on and
later
on and on and... Everybody loves world building, sometimes. Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes expands the Hunger Games world in a way I did not expect. It shows us that in this world, there are Skyrim sneak physics and Snow has maxed out his skill tree. There were so many times when Snow was sneaking around in plain sight and nobody caught him. There were so many times where he cheated in plain sight on national television and nobody said anything. Hell, he outright kills a high-ranking capital citizen and somehow just gets away with it. There were some other weird things that I feel like didn't deserve their own section, like how a lot of the emotional moments didn't really land because of the poor pacing, or how Lucy's outfit had so much main character syndrome compared to everyone else's, or honestly how Lucy was just super annoying and unlikable. I felt like the Nazi imagery was a bit heavy-handed, like, yeah, we get it, the capital is evil. Or the fact that here the Panem government is much less totalitarian, to the point of it being almost non-existent at times. Who's even in charge? Why is there zero government oversight of a forced national death match? Why do universities have so much input in the matter? So if you like what The Hunger Games, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes has to offer, but want something else, what else is out there? Well, if you really want to see this movie, I'd recommend just reading the book first. I haven't read it, but according to all accounts, this film is vastly more enjoyable that way. If you're like me and don't feel like doing homework to watch a movie, the original movies hold up surprisingly well and they're still genuinely great. And if none of that sounds good, try watching Battle Royale, the Japanese Y2K film that is rumored to have inspired The Hunger Games. And as always, thanks for watching.